Jason Cormier had a successful career as a ball player. He really had the world at his fingertips. And he made a courageous decision to leave basketball and to study medicine, a decision that eventually led to him becoming a very successful neurosurgeon. Not just surgeon, but a guy who's doing surgery on the brain or on the spine. You're going to love listening to Dr. Jason Cormier on this episode of Unbeatable.
These stories of triumph over adversity will help you handle your toughest days in life and become unbeatable.
Dr. Jason Cormier, thank you for taking time out of a very busy practice to be with me on this episode of Unbeatable.
Jeff, thanks. It's great to be here. It's a privilege to share a little bit about my story and my life.
Yeah, man. You have been incredibly successful and overcome a lot of hardships. I could do 4 hours in this episode with you of some of the stuff that you've gone through, but obviously you don't have 4 hours to give. So let's talk about life growing up in South Louisiana and having the dream of becoming a ball player and then those dreams kind of evaporating around you. Can you give everybody a little bit of your upbringing?
Sure. So really a simple average family here in Lafayette, Louisiana. It's a very warm atmosphere. People know each other. You know, it's a small
I thought
community.
By warm you meant it's scorching hot and humid down there, y'all.
It gets, we have a very rapid environment. It could be 2 degrees outside one day, and then it's just a Sahara desert the next. So, it's very kind of up in the air.
But the people are warm down there, right?
They're very warm, and it's people know each other. It has that very nice Southern down home feeling. People are always willing to help one another. So grew up in it's a small community. A lot of people know each other, and but very progressive in many different ways. And so my upbringing coming up, I was raised by, single parent. My mother raised 4 of us, 3 other siblings.
Where were you in the 4?
I'm sorry, say again.
Which number were you in the 4 children?
I was number 3.
All right. So you had somebody getting in trouble in front of you and taking all of the pressure off of you.
And also pointing the blame my way.
Yeah,
as well.
Of course. You know how siblings are.
I certainly had, my sister's one of my most favorite people in the world. She was the eldest, and my older brother who, I picked up some good things and tried to emulate some bad things. And then my younger brother who would, he passed away in 1996.
Oh,
and
man.
so that was a difficult
Sorry
thing
to hear.
But coming up, we were a pretty close-knit group. My mother was loving. She was a teacher. Worked pretty hard to support.
I was going to say, she must be a hardworking woman to raise 4
She
children.
She really is. And she was able to provide and put food on the table and always stressed education. And I think that was really the cornerstone and the standard of which we were. That was the bare minimum. You had to make sure that your education was settled, and that helped me later on in life for sure.
Yeah. You played ball a little bit while you were in school, right?
Played basketball for St. Thomas More, and I had some really good players and coaches along the way. Eventually matriculated to LSU, played on Dale Brown. And these are, the days of Stanley Roberts and Chris Jackson, now Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, and Shaquille O'Neal that people know, and there are a number of them, Wayne Sims, just some really great group of people, Ricky Blanton. And then played kind of a semi-pro for a very short stint, and then came back home and really buckled down and eventually matriculated to medical school.
I just got to say this. You played ball with Shaquille or against Shaquille O'Neal.
I tell you, Shaq is, man, I tell you, he's a giant. He's a
I was going to say, I got this image right now of you trying to defend Shaq at the goal, right there at the rim.
Well, I can never really say I defended him. I was on the court with him in the dungeon here and there.
Yeah.
And just I've never seen a person that big move the way he could move. And he still is like that today.
Yeah.
Big guy and just, stays in shape, watches his body. And it was just such a privilege to be on the court. And that was through the graces of God and the help of Coach Dale Brown.
Yeah.
St. Thomas More High School coach, Danny Broussard. So
yeah, for all of the
very gifted to do that.
LSU fans are some of the most loyal fans on the planet. So for all of the LSU fans out there, you get a chance to hear from one of your own. Obviously, you love the game of basketball, but when did you decide, I think I'm going to spend my time and really focus on medicine? What was the catalyst?
So my mother was in sciences, and I was always pretty strong in the sciences. And when I stopped playing basketball, I started working at a local hospital in Baton Rouge, and the athletic department at LSU, they do a really good job in terms of keeping us involved and finishing your education.
Yeah.
And so through Mike Mallett and the athletic department, I was able to finish out and further my interest in medicine. And so through my engagements with doctors at Baton Rouge General Medical Center, I started off as a transporter. I was just transporting patients, from their room to the operating room. And I remember seeing the doors of the operating room. I was like, man, I need to get behind those doors.
Yeah. What are they doing back there? Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
that's where you want to be. And so eventually I got the opportunity to go back there. And I had this interview, and they didn't have any positions, I met with this lady. Her name was Jeannie Woodrum. I remember like it was yesterday, and she was the manager. And I said, look, I want to go to med school. I love doctors. I see what's going on. I want to change lives. I want to work in surgery. And she said, I don't have a position right now, but I don't know, call me tomorrow, and I might have a position.
Really?
So I called it every single day for the next 2 weeks.
She's like, oh, this guy again.
I know. She's like, this guy, something's wrong, but he's enthusiastic. So then I think she hired me because I just kept bugging.
Yeah, because she wants the phone to stop ringing. And because obviously he really does care about this.
Yeah, exactly. So when I started, and Monica Winkler was also at that time, she was another nurse, the higher ups. And I remember just learning so much from the techs, from the people in central supply, the techs that were cleaning instruments, and I was doing all those sorts of things. And I was hanging around the operating rooms, just like a bug, and I was just kind of peeking in. And so one day, one of the doctors said, "Hey, you want to come on in? You look really interested." And and I said, "Yeah, I want to come in." And so it led to, "You want to scrub in?" "Yes, I want to scrub in." And it was like my golden, it was golden hour. And after that, I was done. I was sold.
You were hooked, huh?
Going. Yeah.
You're obviously a guy who's passionate about medicine, because most people are not going to pay attention to the techs that are scrubbing the instruments and pay attention to the folks that are orderlies. They're going to watch where the action is. So you must have loved medicine, and it must be a real passion for you.
I was persistent, Jeff. And I tell you, medicine is, I just feel that there's no other place in the world where you're obviously able to interact with people when they're their most vulnerable. Yeah, they'll tell you things they won't tell their next door neighbor, their best friend, or whatever. And you have that opportunity to interact with them and help change their lives. And through the grace of God, I've been able to do that.
Yeah. You're blowing me away, by the way. There's this misconception out there of the typical college athlete who doesn't know how to read and write, but they can really, they're skilled with the ball, and they end up graduating from a very prestigious university with zero education. That's definitely not the case for you, and it sounds like not the case at LSU at all.
LSU changed my opinion actually of that as well when I went there. We had tutors. We had the bare minimum. You have to make this grade point average, and let me tell you, the SEC has one of the highest grade point average across the board. And so those athletic departments really honed down even before I got there. And let me tell you, they're very strict about that. And so you're never going to find athletes really graduating without being able to read and write and really manage their own businesses. I mean, there are some really successful athletes that came out of LSU. I'm one of them, but there's several of them out there, and I'm proud to be part of that alumni.
Well, you must have distinguished yourself as a student because you got a number of scholarships. You did really, really well, honors as a student. So what were the scholarships, and what made you stand out from the crowd?
So I tell you, it didn't always start out that way. When I started at LSU, it was basketball. It was, kind of hanging out, being part of what I thought was the limelight. And And so my grades suffered initially. And so I had to go back and redo some things. And it wasn't because the athletic department didn't do their part. I didn't do my
Yeah.
part. And that's kind of part of the failures that I had to go through, own up to, be accountable, and then make those things right. So eventually along the way, I got involved with, coaching Special Olympics. And I got involved with professional organizations like the pre-medical societies. And those helped me really focus on where I wanted my destination to go. And so through that, my grades really became, they really skyrocketed essentially. And it gave me the opportunity to succeed and to acquire those sorts of scholarships to be more successful at what I wanted to do.
Can you do the short version of you go from LSU, talk about medical school, and then, eventually becoming a very skilled surgeon? Give us a little bit about the challenges of that process.
So first of all, basketball helped me understand time balance. If you've been in sports and you might leave on a Monday and come back on a Thursday, and you left on chapter 2, now they're in chapter 7.
Yeah.
You have to kind of balance those things. So taking that into time management, endurance from just practice and lifting weights, etc. By the time I got to med school, and actually med schools were impressed that, when they see an athlete coming, they're like, okay, this person.
They're like, here we go again. One of these guys, right?
Right. But the endurance that you learn, you understand time management, you understand the brotherhood of it, you understand keeping your studies there, and you have the endurance to push through. So they're excited to endorse the athletes. And then applying to go into neurosurgery, they jumped all over it. They were like, okay, you want to be a surgeon, which means you have the endurance to do it inside of the operating room. You have that hand-eye coordination. We love that. And that's what really translated out. Now, there are people that didn't go through all sports and they're just as well. But I can tell you that my basketball days helped me a great deal to become the surgeon that I am today.
Just in terms of education, what does it take to get to the point that you're a fully educated, fully trained neurosurgeon? What were the big education steps that you had to go through to get to that point?
Sure, that's a good question, Jeff. So, and in the beginning, I would say anybody that wants to do it can do it. Look down the road 10 or 15 years as to where you want to be.
Yeah.
It makes that next year a little bit easier.
Right.
So don't look at it because it can become a little daunting.
Yeah.
So 4 years of college, then 4 years of medical school, and then 6 or 7 years, depending on if you do a research year, to become a full fledged neurosurgeon.
Yeah. I asked that.
After that,
go for it, man.
And then after that, you have to accumulate certain data or caseload before you become officially board certified, and happens in 3 to 5 years after you finish.
So essentially, the average timeline on this is how long?
It's about 15 to 16 years of dedicated study. Yeah.
I did that on purpose because I have the greatest respect for medical doctors all over the world. Then you take a surgeon who applies themselves and has to go through a specialist, any kind of doctor who's a specialist goes through some, more intense education. But not only surgeons, but when you start to get into neurosurgery, now you're talking about intense years after year of hard work to get to this point.
It's hard work. I think it's mental toughness, if you will. And I've experienced the mental toughness of what that means and how you bring yourself to be able to function under times of stress. And I think that's kind of what mental toughness is. And I think you learn that, in the end, many specialists in different disciplines also go through that as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Having the privilege of serving with some incredible warriors across the U.S. military, we talked a lot about physical toughness, what it takes to just meet the physical demands on the battlefield, but we talked even more about mental toughness. And I've always found that the greatest warriors out there, the most skilled guys and gals on the battlefield, were much more mentally tough than physically tough. You, Jason, have both. And I want to pause for just a few minutes, give you a couple of moments to talk about physical toughness and mental toughness and how these two work together and how one can help the other. but you can't get alone on just physical toughness. Actually, I need you to even explain the difference between toughness and just being strong. And
Sure.
Can you talk physical toughness and mental toughness for a few minutes?
Absolutely. So my humble opinion, I think mental toughness is really the ability to function under stressful circumstances consistently under stressful
Yeah,
circumstances.
in your case, for 16 years.
Correct. And then the physical toughness is being able to work consistently through pain. If you're in the gym and you're working out, you're carrying heavy artillery, that's when the physical toughness comes in. And I think there's a link in that they both feed off of one another. If your mental toughness can get you through to becoming physical and physically tough, and vice versa. If you have a weak link in your mental toughness, then you're going to have more pain, essentially.
Yeah.
And vice versa. And so it can drive you to become a stronger person, not necessarily a tough person, but a stronger person. And so when I think about can you be strong and weak? Yes, you could also be strong and tough.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily tough just because you're strong. So you can take a guy or a woman or whoever that can lift 300 pounds or bench press 300 pounds, but when something very simple comes, they can't multitask and they squirm away. So you can be strong with the weights, but you're not really tough in terms of how you can multitask and manage things in the midst of a crisis. You know, there is a Naval SEAL that wrote this quote. I love it. I use it every time I give a talk. And the quote is, under stress, we don't rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training.
Yeah.
And that's what
wow, that's so true. Yeah.
And I can't tip my hat off enough to every person that's put on that uniform like yourself and protected the country. And, you know, that's mental and physical toughness. And you learn it like it's the back of your hand to be able to survive and provide our way of life.
Yeah. But I mentioned this because you really do have both. It takes incredible physical discipline and toughness to be able to play ball at the collegiate level. It takes mind-blowing mental toughness to be able to meet those academic challenges year after year, gate after gate, to be a medical doctor. And I have always found that the mentally tough guys and gals will figure out a way to accomplish the mission. The physically tough will give it everything they got. It just may or it may not be enough to accomplish the task or the challenge that's in front of them.
I can't echo that enough, man. You have to be able to see the destination before you get there. Otherwise, you're just pumping iron and you're not going to get there. Your mental toughness will get you there. In the operating room, you know, if I'm in the midst of an aneurysm in the brain and I have to have plan A, B, and C lined up if that aneurysm ruptures to be able to get through. And it could be 2 hours, it could be 7 hours, but you have to have the mental toughness to know that we have to win this game and we're going to win this game one way or the other.
I've just got this mental image of you with your hands inside somebody's brain for 7 hours. Which is mind-blowing. Let's just be honest, man. You can really study hard and you can be a genius, but to be a skilled surgeon, just having genius level IQ isn't going to get it for you. At some point, you have to have the hands for it too, right?
Absolutely. You do have to have the hands and the patience to do it.
Yeah. In fact, while I was preparing for this episode, we talked about this just a second ago. I was thinking, I want to have a little fun with you for a second about skilled hands and more importantly about steady hands. Cause I'm thinking I want the guy who's got his hands in my brains for 7 hours to have a very steady hand, especially when he's got a scalpel with him, and making sure that he's doing what needs to be done and doesn't accidentally, cut something off or make an incision that doesn't need to be there. So I was doing a little bit of research. Let's just have some fun with this one for a second, Jason. Okay. A little bit of research on those jobs out there that it would really benefit you if you had a pretty steady hand for this job. In other words, your job can become really, really ugly if you don't have a steady hand. The first job that comes to my mind is those military snipers, those guys and gals that are making a shot from about 3,000 yards away. And just the slightest movement of your hand can change that bullet for meters at that kind of distance. So for me, number one on the list of a steady hand is a sniper.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
I was also thinking about, the folks that do all of that photo editing, and they're out there, they're on Photoshop and they're sitting there clicking away, 10,000 clicks into an image, trying to turn it into this beautiful piece of art. And if you make the wrong click or hit the wrong button, if there's not an undo button, you're in deep trouble. So you better have a steady hand if you're working Photoshop too.
Yeah.
What about the guy or the gal that does American Sign Language, right? Like if you if you're all over the map when you're trying to do sign language interpretation or translation for somebody else, you're out of a job pretty fast if you don't have a steady hand there.
I think butchers have to have a strong hand.
Thank you. Perfect. Because if you're out there cutting big chunks of meat and you got your thumb right next to it, if your hand better be perfectly steady, or else you're about to go to the hospital and go see Jason for some surgery because you made the wrong cut. Or I don't watch all of those TV channels, but there are tons of those baking challenges out there, and they put this fine detail. Those pastry chefs out there put this incredibly fine detail on their cake. There really are like works of art. And I was thinking, like, if you sneeze, if you make one wrong move, you're going to have to go back and do lots of time to fix one small mistake.
Yeah. I think race car drivers, man, race car drivers turning a curve at 200 miles per hour, particularly in NASCAR. If you don't have steady hands, man, you're going to hit that wall or hit somebody, and boy, that's an expensive day.
And for those of you who are driving and listening to this and not watching it, you don't get a chance to see the poster that's behind Jason. But we're going to talk about Jason in the race car in just a second. But in all of those jobs, man, I'm thinking about the skill that it takes to do it. But for me, without a doubt, a surgeon is number one, and a neurosurgeon is at the top of that list, because you don't really have the option of making a mistake. Is this accurate?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, the nervous system doesn't really give you two chances. You really have one time to get it right, and you have to do that the right way.
There has to be a degree of stress that goes along with that, right? Because I can't have an off day, not when I've got the instruments in my hand and got somebody opened up. So how do you mitigate the stress, or how do you deal with the stress that goes along with that?
So a lot of stress, I'll tell you, occurs in residency management. I have, Dr. Mark Hadley, Dr. James Market to help with that. And I can tell you that in terms of stress, how you manage it, it's one of those things where you watch how they deal with it. And as you watch them, you try to emulate them. So now when you're on your own in private practice or in an academic practice, those instances where stress comes. I mean, it's one of those things, it becomes your daily preparation. And so no matter how many times I've taken out a brain tumor or an aneurysm or I've done spine surgery, I always make sure to prepare. Wise man said, I think it's John Wooden, he said, failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Yeah.
So you need to kind of daily review and keep yourself up to what's the most latest techniques, because you can run into problems, and you need to have plan A, plan B, and plan C. And as you prepare yourself, you will decrease the amount of stress that you undergo. So I'll tell you, every time I'm up against an aneurysm, there's a level of stress, but I tend to thrive on stress, and I think you can agree with that.
Obviously, if you wouldn't be in this world if you didn't thrive a little bit on stress.
Right. I look forward to it, and so I embrace it, and so it's become, while it's a challenge, man, I can't wait to get in there to deal with it and see what I'm made of. Yeah. So it's a nice challenge.
I never thought about that. That is a great way of looking at it. That there is a whole lot riding on this operation, literally, for the patient. And there's the stress of you don't get a chance to make a mistake, but I love the outlook that you have of this is a challenge. I can't wait to get in there and see what this challenge presents and see how I can tackle this challenge. That's a great perspective.
When I went to med school, part of my interview, they asked me, well, you play basketball and whatnot, so why is it you want to be a surgeon? I said, well, I think about it like the 3 seconds left on the shot clock. I want the ball in my hands. I want to take that shot. Yeah. And so you want to be on my table.
Sure. Yeah. Every skilled athlete wants to get to themselves to that point where there's 3 seconds left. The ball is in my hands. We're going to win or lose based on what happens next. Here we go.
That's right.
Yeah. So what brought you to racing? Because I got this image right now of Dr. Stephen Strange driving his car off the side of a cliff and smashing his hands up so that he can't do surgery anymore. What would prompt you to say, I want to pick up auto racing?
Well, first off, my brother was he drove cars fast all the time. So it's his fault.
Your brother was pretty much a race car driver from the time that he got behind the wheel.
Yeah.
All right.
He drove cars all the time. And so eventually I met up with a guy by the name of Jeff Goodwin, and he was involved in NASCAR. And ultimately he introduced me to the ranks of NASCAR, Mark Gundrum and other people associated with NASCAR. And it's kind of in the book. And what happened was I was racing go-karts at the time. By the time I got to NASCAR, I was racing professional go-karts.
You jumped from, I got to hear this again. You just jumped from go-karts to NASCAR?
Yes.
That's awesome.
And the idea is that all the Formula One drivers were the best go-karters of their day. And so we had people in the neighborhood that had these racing go-karts. I got interested and I got hooked. So I have 4 active, very strong, very fast racing go-karts that the Formula One drivers actually drive. And so it just came one thing to the next. I did this racing course in Leeds, Alabama, right outside of Birmingham.
Yeah, sure. Know exactly where it is.
Drivers driving on the track. One a girl, she was driving for Indy at the time, Peppa, your last name, but she said, man, do you race somewhere? I go, I race go-karts. She goes, I can tell. And so we want you to come back for the master's course. So I did that. And after that, things just started develop. And so once I got into NASCAR, I was allowed to become, a teacher about brain injuries, spinal cord injury, et cetera. And I would teach this to drivers. And they were all in, and kind of I got to get inside the cars and look around and even got to get on the track a couple of times. And so that's kind of how that all
is awesome.
Yeah.
Listen, people that are listening to this episode right now are thinking, this guy is the total package. He's athletic. He is very intelligent. He's a NASCAR driver. He is a neurosurgeon. This guy has never made a mistake, never failed in his life. And that certainly isn't the case. So, Jason, let's talk about some of those. You've had a lot of ups, but let's talk about some of those downs that you've had to go through.
Sure. Well, in all honesty, so I've been able to get into the NASCARs. I've never driven officially.
Sure.
I want to take away from that. But sure, like anyone, I made bad mistakes. I did not always make the best grades coming up, but I had a good mother that was, would put a belt to your rear end and get you.
Knew how to motivate you. Yep.
And that helped, man. That really helped. I wasn't the easiest kid to raise. I wasn't the easiest student in class. And part of those failures, I was one that, would spend money I didn't have. I'd charge up credit cards, money I didn't have, and essentially, and get in relationships and didn't take them as seriously as I should have. But through that, I always remained true, I think, to God. And along the way, God will always show you, who you are, and hey, don't forget, you really need me.
He has a way of doing that. Yep.
Exactly. And so I had a mother, I think, that prayed every night that, her sons and her daughter would come home safe, and they would listen to her at some point. But as you said, my failures, I've been involved in different things, and not all those things came true. I got involved in selling knives one time when I was in college, kind of in between my first and second year. And I thought, man, I'm going to save knives, make a lot of money, start my own business. And that didn't happen. And so I was a DJ in high school with these 2 guys, Marcus Brown and Carl Martin, who were one of my best friends. And we had this little group, and it didn't really go anywhere. We had a demo tape and all that. But what happened was in 2015, I attended this concert, and it was called Hangout Fest in Orange Beach.
Hangout Fest.
Yes, Skrillex was like the DJ. He was an EDM super DJ. And I looked across the crowd, and I was like, man, all these people are just having fun. They're not thinking about problems. I have to revisit that. We revisit music and DJing and all that. And so that's when, I started thinking, that's a passion. The passions that you have, don't forget them. And that's what's going to get you through. And so I've been through detention before, and not formal jail or
Sure.
whatever, but
Yeah.
in school, having to go after school because I wasn't acting right in class, having to run lines because the coach said, you did this the wrong way. So I was never above being disciplined. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things I would like to go back and do over that I could have done a whole lot better, but I learned from it. And I think through that will, determination, and being driven to overcome those things, I always wanted to be successful at something. Didn't know what it was. I came to the fork in the road several times and said, what am I going to do with my life? This is nuts. I mean, I think there are several people out there like that.
Yeah.
And if they're listening and they read and follow, just know that, be passionate about whatever it is you want to do. And it's going to happen for you. It may not happen tomorrow, but you keep chiseling away from that stone and you're going to find a statue underneath.
Yeah. I was just thinking, you wanted to be successful at something, and you have all of these talents. You're a DJ, you're a ball player, you're a race car driver, you're an incredible student, you're a medical doctor. Your challenge is, I've got way too much opportunity, and I'm going to have to focus on one of those areas and just play in the others. Is that right?
They had a very strange way of coming together, Jeff. It's do I like surgery? I love surgery. Do I like racing? I'd race every day if I could. And so how many people can say, on Friday, I get to go watch racing. I get to visit the track. I get to walk and talk with the drivers. And then I can't wait to get back to work on Monday because I get to operate. I get to interact with patients. And then the music, gosh, music stimulates the mind in so many different ways.
Oh, it sure does.
So much literature on it. And so when I get into my studio, I build a studio within my home, and my fiance kind of, she's got to bug me to come to bed sometimes because I'm up there for hours. And, but I start making music, and music just stimulates the mind so much. And now I've been able to work with some pretty good people, and Jeff Goodman returns again, and now Noah Gordon with 8-Track Entertainment, and just some really good collaborations with different groups. And now I'm making music for really the professional world to hear.
If somebody wants to listen to some of your beats, you're making EDM, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to listen to your music, how do they find it?
So cormmusic.com is the main website. We also have
say that word one more time for those that missed it.
Yeah, Corm Music. So, and that's spelled CORMMUZIK. We
all right. Yeah.
On, right.
Corm Music.
And so it's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, it's on Apple TV, Apple Music, iTunes. And at one point, actually, one of my songs went to number 3 on the iTunes Top 100, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
All right.
And then YouTube, and then we have more. I've been collaborating with some country music stars and some upcoming stars, and so that's been pretty cool. And what I do is I convert country music to EDM to bring the two demographics together. For someone that doesn't listen to country music, they can now listen to it and go, that's a cool song. Yeah. And now they can listen to the words and understand what these country singers, which have just loads of talent, they understand what they're saying, and now they can listen to their music.
I didn't even know about this. So now I know what I'm going to listen to tomorrow when I'm working out when I'm looking for some music to listen to when I'm working out. Country mixed with EDM. I can't wait to check this out. You're a very driven guy. I'm putting air quotes up right now for all of the people that are listening and not watching this. And the word driven is the perfect description of you as an athlete, as a musician, as a student, and as a doctor. So why not turn it into a book? Tell everybody about the book Driven. Let everybody know where the project is and what the timeline looks like for it.
Thanks, Jeff. So the book is called Driven, as you said. It's written by myself and Mike Harris, who co-authored it. And the book is about my life, about my upbringing, about the trials and tribulations that I went through, how I was able to turn some failures into some successes of what I am today. And I think it's a book that's a very easy read. We just finished the formatting, so it's going to be out in print very, very soon. I have a number of good people working on it. In terms of getting the publication out and getting the book printed, and then ultimately the distribution. And it's a book that it's gonna, I think, touch the hearts and minds of a number of people that might think, man, these are insurmountable things. But this was an average guy. He wasn't a genius. He wasn't a superhero, and he accomplished some pretty successful things. And how all those things came together, how music came together. You know, what's interesting, and I talk about this in the book, that my music, I basically, after I make or complete a track, I bring it into the operating room, and I let the operating room staff, and also my fiance, Caitlin, I let them listen to it. And so if they go, yeah, they're kind of the litmus test. So if they like it, keep it. If they don't like it, I toss it, get rid of it. And so I've taken that and merged those two, married those two together, if you will. I've also sent music to NASCAR drivers as well. They kind of get a kick out of it. And so one of the things I think it emulates is kind of moving your head. You move your head in neurosurgery, you move your head in racing, you move your head in music. And at the end of it, you know, now working with A-Track Entertainment, we have 2 billboards that we're sitting on with Aaron Lewis and Ira Dean and Jeffrey Steele.
All right.
The song Am I the Only One? And so it's just been amazing. It's an amazing trip. And I think that in the book, you're not going to see or read about a person that did it perfect every time. You're not going to read about a person that was just successful. You're going to read about a person that went through mental abuse, that went through child physical abuse, that had some depression, that encountered those things, that wasn't perfect, but through all that found and had the mental toughness, the ability to, again, to push through stress and stressful situations, and said, you know what, this is not going to be the end for me. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to drive, and I'm going to get there some kind of way.
Yeah, I wanted to just give you a moment now so there's a lot of people that are listening that are saying, this guy's just good at everything that he does, but that is not your whole story. And Driven describes you had some real challenges and some real failures that you had to overcome and figure out how to turn those failures into successes. So with the last few minutes, can you just describe for somebody just one example? Don't give the whole book away. Go out and buy the book Driven when it comes out this fall. But give one example from the book of a challenge or a failure that you really had to confront. And I love your words. You had to own up to your failure instead of putting it on somebody else. But you turned the failure around and didn't let it become final. You learned from it, grew from it, and became successful because of it. Can you share one example of that?
Sure, absolutely. So before I entered medical school, my younger brother passed away. Mm-hmm. And so I went into a really deep, dark space. I was very depressed, and I'd actually become suicidal. And I didn't want to talk about it. I had several instances where I think this is it. And I was being pretty selfish, and I felt like I could just be better off without the world and whatnot. And through going to medical school, I remember my first test, the first test we took in medical school, and I did well on it, and it set me even further down that dark pathway.
Really?
I was thinking about my brother, and he's not here to enjoy that. Why couldn't he be here, and all those sorts of things, and why am I deserving? I shouldn't be deserving of this. And so I felt like I wanted to just escape, and the world just didn't matter. And so it took me some time through finally talking to people and seeing where other people who were successful also encountered some of these mental things. Yeah. Some people, great stars like, Robin Williams and, commit suicide. No one is immune to it. Right. Even as a doctor and pursuing all the things that I pursue, everyone has an element of depression, and we need to talk about it because there are more people, even more successful than I am, that undergo these things. Yeah. And once I started talking about it, I was able to see, you know what, I do have something to offer, and I will be missed, and I shouldn't be this selfish. And so it took me some time through talking, speaking to different psychologists who really helped me get over that. And leading to that, I was successful in med school. And at one point had an encounter where, again, another failure. I had a situation where I was out one night with some friends, and I got pulled over. And it was a situation where I had to face, and look, no one's perfect. Yeah. And, the first thing you have to do is forgive the person in the mirror. And if you can do that, and you can, because God forgives us, you have to hone in on what's important. Right. And what's important to me, my pot of gold, is that I know that I'm not perfect. I know that I have, I think, what's a perfect plan, and that's to really follow my dreams.
Right.
And with my pot of gold is my family, my fiance, Caitlin, our 2 kids, Brixton and Celine. And I drive every day for that. And without that, I don't know where I would be today and their families. And it's just been great.
Yeah, this story is so powerful, losing your brother and all of the grief that goes along with that. And I've seen similar circumstances among warriors that they develop what we would call survivor guilt, and they don't feel worthy to be around anymore because the guy or gal that was killed, they were a much better person. And now when good stuff happens to me, it actually makes me worse. It makes me feel terrible because I don't feel like I should be here in the first place. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you just did something great. It should be a great moment in school, but it's actually worse for you because you don't have your brother to celebrate and you don't even feel worthy, to celebrate.
Jeff, that totally nails it. I mean, exactly what you said. You feel guilty because this person I felt like was better than me. And so why am I here experiencing the success? And so it drove me into a darker place. But now I understand the message in that, and that now you're placed with a responsibility to do more. And, there's this old saying that sometimes, success can take you where character can't sustain you. So you are burdened on your shoulders to carry that torch and be that person with that character. And so I challenge myself every day to be a better person and to work harder than I did the day before.
Well, I'm glad you brought up depression because anybody who's listened to your story would say, this guy's got it all. This guy's accomplished it all. If there's anybody who should have never had to struggle with depression or bouts of it, surely it would be you. But the truth is, all of us may deal with it from time to time. Some people may deal with it a lot. Some of the most successful people on the planet have been plagued with bouts of depression. And especially over the last few years, the isolation and the loneliness that went along with COVID really brought this to the surface. So, Jason, let's say that there's somebody who is starting to struggle with it right now. And they have never really reached out for help before, and they're not even sure that they want to reach out for help. I want you to, give them a little bit of advice right now. I want you to give them a prescription. They're dealing with depression and they're not sure if they even want somebody's help because they're not sure if they trust that it's going to make a difference. Can you give them some advice right now?
Sure, Jeff. I would say that I have been where you are, maybe worse and maybe not, but I would say, talk about it. I would say that you're probably feeling embarrassed. You probably don't want people to know. Mm-hmm. And I was there as well. I didn't want anyone to know. I had an ego. I was a basketball player, this, that, and the other. And you don't want anyone to know that you're depressed because then you automatically think they're going to think you're crazy and now people are looking at you. But I will tell you, there are millions and millions of people that feel the exact same thing. And the people that talk about it are those that get better. People that talk about it will gain more support. If you sit in the silo, then you're probably going to end up in that silo. And I can tell you that I have been there. It sucks. It's horrible. Anybody tells you it's a great feeling, they're not telling you the truth. Anybody tells you that they're not embarrassed to talk about it, they're not telling you the truth. Talk about it, and you will find more doors open and more people willing to help, and you will find successes that you've never dreamed that you can actually accomplish. And I tell you, there's the 4 things that I think will help improve happiness for those that are, really down and are depressed and whatnot. And pretty much like you said in COVID, the first thing I say is, wake up early every single day. Get started. Get your sleep, but wake up, early every day. Second, try to work harder than you think you did the day before. Third, don't go longer than 3 days without working out. And number 4, take time to read something. Even if it's a paragraph, read something every single day. And you're going to stimulate your heart, your mind, your brain, all those different things.
Package,
and it's going to give you something more positive. You're going to read something in the newspaper, wherever it is on the wall, and it's going to prompt you to just, man, you know what? I could do that.
Yeah.
And then once you start with, I can do that, and you engage that conversation, and you find just, again, average people like me became a neurosurgeon. Anybody can do it. It's dedication and understanding that you generate that mental toughness. And through your brain and neuroplasticity, you will forge that sort of positive energy, and you will continue to get better. You're depressed. I get it. I was there. I know what you're talking about. And I was down and I was in a dark spot. And I made it out through some of those simple things. Anybody can do it.
I was just thinking, it's funny that you would use this phrase mental toughness, because I was thinking Jason is just giving you right now a prescription on how to develop mental toughness. If you're struggling
Absolutely.
right now, you do the little small exercises that make you a little bit stronger, and then you do stronger exercises that make you even stronger, and that's how you build mental toughness. You can't lift weights for it, but you can do some little small things that you're hearing from Jason right now.
And Jeff, you're so right. And it's not something that, I'll be honest with you, it's not something you can go and buy at the store.
Right.
It's not going to be packaged.
Doesn't come in a pill bottle. Yep.
You have to commit. There's going to be a challenge. It's going to be hard, but it's harder if you're sitting there by yourself.
Right.
Like you're alone when there's so many different resources out there. By yourself, it's a big world to figure out that big equation out.
Yeah.
And so if you're willing to commit, you're willing to accept the challenge, be consistent about what you want to do, man, you can make it out. You can. Give the rest of the world an opportunity to hear.
Hey, I want people to figure out how they can get in touch with you. So you have a successful practice right now in South Louisiana. Tell everybody about your practice.
So I practice general neurosurgery. And what that means is I operate on the brain and the spine. And I do a number of complex intracranial tumors, which could include intraoperative brain mapping. The patients are wide awake, and we test them on the table, which is kind of cool. And that
sounds cool. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. It's probably people see it on Discovery, but yeah, we that really happens. And so complex spine, I rebuild lower back, the cervical spine, the thoracic spines. And so it's a very well-balanced practice.
Yeah.
I work with residents. And through that, I've been able to work with different organizations like NASCAR, like the NFL, and other development football leagues. I'm working with other spinal instrumentation companies to develop implants. And through all that, I sit on 3 boards for the FDA.
Wow.
There's a lot of stuff.
You're
cool stuff
busy.
going on, man.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get back to high contact sports where there are brain related injuries. The Q collar is FDA cleared, and we're pushing that, and it's been shown to stop concussions by over 80%.
Wow.
So many different things to help individuals that have been injured, not only from head injury, but the negative impacts that COVID's had, the economic downfalls that COVID has had.
Yeah.
And so my practice is primarily neurosurgery, but through that I have, different veins, if you will, arteries, and other specialties that have helped just make this one umbrella just really a dream, if you will.
And I don't want to miss the fact that you're a very, very busy guy, but you also donate a little bit of your time and your skills to a homeless clinic as well. Is that right?
Correct. So when I was in med school, that's when that started. And so I wanted to definitely donate my time, and it was myself and a number of other medical students. It was part of the LSU medical school in New Orleans, that program. And that helped me understand that, every human being out there needs help.
Yeah.
Whether you don't look at what they have an illness, and it's still a privilege to be able to treat them because they're trusting you. It doesn't matter what they have in their pocket, and it's an opportunity to, again, improve their well-being. And that's what makes me feel better at the end of the day. If I'm able to help someone, that makes me feel better.
Well, the book Driven is coming out sometime this fall. You're making music on Corm Music, ZIK, not SIC, cornmusic.com. But if people want to know more about you, how do they find out more about you? So
Acadiana-neurosurgery.com is my practice. Motorsportsafetygroup.com is the motorsport safety group that I created. And I created that with 6 neurosurgeons, 2 orthopedic surgeons, a heart surgeon, and a physiologist. And that group was brought together. The name kind of came in my conversations with Julian Bales that people probably know from the movie Concussion. And we wanted to take on high contact sports that involved, the head related head impact and high and brain injury. So as neurosurgeons, that's near and dear to us. Julian's one of the most notable experts in the land. We took on high contact sports, things like racing, rugby, We took on help the military, in
Yeah,
fact,
absolutely.
jockeys, etc. And so through that, I also created the Motorsports Brain and Spine Foundation. And all those are www.motorsportsafetygroup.com and also brainandspinefoundation.com. And through that, we wanted to create this educational portal or exchange, if you will, to allow people to go there and find out the truth about brain injury and traumatic and chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, dementia, and high school players, professional football players, race car drivers, etc. And so that's where we created that whole situation. And so I would encourage people to tune into or go to those websites.
Uh-huh.
And that will also provide links to the Twitter pages and also the Instagram pages. And there's a wealth of information about brain injury, about how you can keep yourself safer and protect your brain.
Yeah. And for those of you who are driving, he used a couple of long URLs. So we'll put links to that in the notes to this episode, and just go check out the notes, and you can hyperlink directly to those sites. Jason, thank you for, I know you're at the hospital, or I mean, you're at your practice right now. You've got patients that you're treating today. So thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to be with us, man. You've got an incredible story.
Jeff, thank you. There are a lot of people involved in that story. Again, beginning with my fiance, Caitlin, our two kids, Brixton and Celine. And again, that's my pot of gold.
Yeah.
That's what gets me through the day and pushes me. I think everyone has that. And even if you don't, if you're sitting in a silo and you're depressed, there's someone out there that cares a whole lot about you. Speak up about it.
Yeah.
And just to drive a lot of unsung heroes at different hospitals and in my practice, it takes a team effort to make all this work. So,
well, you are a driven guy. So who better to write the book Driven? Can't wait to see it this fall.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Have a great day.
You too.
I don't know if it occurred to you like it did to me. A guy that has accomplished all that Jason accomplished in this episode is also a guy who struggled with depression and made that really courageous decision to reach out and to get some help, which says no matter who you are, there's going to be some challenges in life, and sometimes you're going to need a little bit of help in those challenges if you're struggling, not just with depression, but if you're just struggling now, take the hardest step. The first step is always the hardest step. Reach out and let somebody that you trust know you're struggling, and they'll come alongside you, and then you'll be able to tackle that challenge with them, and you too can be unbeatable. Hey, if you found this broadcast for the first time and you really like what you heard today, why don't you go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? If you've been listening to us for a while, you can do us a favor and let everybody else know how you feel about this podcast by rating us on the prominent podcast platforms or by following us on social media. Just look for @Unbeatable Podcast. Did you know that we have a totally free resource? It's called the Survival Guide, the Unbeatable Army Survival Guide, and it's just chocked full of quotes and ideas to help you when you're struggling or to give you a little bit of motivation when you're down. If you want this thing completely free, all you got to do is go to unbeatablearmy.com. Thanks for joining me for this episode with Dr. Jason Cormier. I'll see you right back here next week.